into a completely new part of the property. Here's the proposed site plan. It's going to continue on with the regular storage units that he has proposed before in this configuration. And to alleviate some concerns about screening, or to move that screening from the previous site plan, he's going to move that up north along the property line and a little bit along the northwest side of the property line as well, with some trees, both deciduous and preferably some coniferous trees as well, and that is going to be part of the conditions. This location is at the Crooks Runner exit, which is a rural service center. All the other parts of the exit, the corner of the exit, are also either commercial or industrial use. So the expansion of this is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. The staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit with the following conditions. The property shall adhere to the submitted site plan dated 3/2/15. This includes building locations and tree planting plan. No outside storage shall be allowed at any time. No commercial businesses shall be allowed to operate out of the storage units. New storage buildings shall match the color of the existing buildings. All driving and parking areas shall be hard surface to the standards of Minnehaha County's zoning ordinance. The hard surface shall be required to be installed once all the storage units are constructed, or by August 31st, 2016, whichever is sooner. All lights shall be of shoebox style, directing lights directly downward into the property. All trees shall be kept in a live state. Any dead tree shall be replaced within one growing season. At least one of the staggered rows of trees in the north side of the property shall be planted with an evergreen coniferous species, and building permits are required for the storage units. I guess we can go over some of the pictures of the site. It is gated, so to prevent people from coming in who are not renting there.
So the question is, the current retention pond that they're showing on their drawing, is that in existence now?
Yes, the current retention pond is in existence. And I've been told that that has been built for the entire property, not just what he has had before. So.
Any questions for Kevin? Thank you. The applicant, please come forward, state your name and address.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tim T. Hart, 25524 472nd Avenue. I just wanted to discuss one item on the conditional use permit and possibly ask for permission to leave the site gravelled as it is now instead of the the asphalt surfacing that's being required at this time.
Okay.
How much is, I'm sorry, I don't know, how much is being asked to be paved or whatever?
They want to pave all of it. It's approximately a 9-acre site. I don't know exactly, it'll be several $100,000 to asphalt surface the entire facility. There are several businesses in that area on the other side of the interstate that are just using gravel surface at this time. About half a dozen to a dozen of them.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We do have an addition, a subdivision over by Hartford that has really been a pain for us because their drainage is absolutely terrible. And people drive over each other's front yards because the road is impassable when in the spring. And we would hate to see things get to that kind of condition because it would be a hardship for anyone doing business with you or whatever. Just bring this up because it has been an issue for us in the past.
Yes, I would agree. So when you say you don't want to pave it all, is it a portion that you intend to pave, or what? I mean, what is it? Just
right now, the drainage is working really well. We have over a 1% grade draining into the detention pond from the buildings. And we're gonna maintain that with the rest of the buildings. So we haven't had any issues at this time, and I have no complaints from the customers.
So you're saying you want to go from all of it to none of it?
If allowed to.
Okay.
Okay, so when you originally put these initial buildings in, it was agreed that you would pave that at that time.
What's that?
You agreed to pave that at that time when you got your initial permit for this site?
Yes, it is on the.
So now you want to backtrack and say, no, I don't want to do it
Correct.
anymore, I haven't even done what I was supposed to do.
Well, I
So
wasn't
this is like
required
begging
to yet.
forgiveness for what you haven't done so far.
I don't believe I was required to yet. Kevin could probably fill us in on the requirement.
The requirement for last time was, it was supposed to be paved and it was allowed to wait until all the buildings were constructed. And I think
So
in
you
the
know it's
original,
coming.
so on the site plan, there's still one more building or two more buildings on the current conditional use permit before all buildings are constructed.
I thought when we approved this that it was supposed to be at that time. It
That's-
doesn't seem like we usually skip over that.
Well, that was what I saw in the improvements of the last site, part of the last conditional use permit.
I think there was something in there about the site being 80% complete.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
I think I read that, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think you have the authority, and just as a point of clarification, it's required in the zoning ordinance in Article 1504, where it says, any driveway, parking lot, unloading or loading areas in a commercial or an industrial zone district shall be constructed with a hard surface when the property is accessed from a hard surface road. Hard surface, and then we give several options. You can do concrete, asphalt, or crushed or recycled requirements. So if the applicant, here's how I read this, if the applicant really wants to have this waived, he will need to apply for a variance. Because it is a requirement of the zoning ordinance. I don't believe you have the authority to waive that
We
at
would
this
be
time.
legislating if we approved it.
So,
Right.
well, yeah, you would be violating your own zoning ordinance without having gone through a variance.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that clarification. I would also indicate that, at least from my opinion, we typically have real issues with gravel near a hard surface, and the gravel get tracked out on the hard surface and causing problems. So
Okay.
you can apply for a variance, but it may be swimming upstream a little bit, I think.
What's that?
It might be swimming upstream a little
Okay.
bit.
Well, that's
It's up
what I
to you.
wanted to ask you, if it's, I just thought I'd discuss it a little bit.
Sure.
Find out
And
what my
that's
options
what
are.
Now, if you want to further, if I just can interject one more thing, if you want to further clarify for Mr. Tehart what areas, I mean, if there may be some wiggle room, but I think that the driveway that comes off the hard surface road and some of that is
That's
going
why
to
I
need
was
to be
asking
paved.
what percentage earlier. You know, if you've got a significant area within your lot that is hard surface, so that the gravel is off before the cars
Okay.
enter the roadway,
That would help a lot.
you know, your customers are gonna suffer, and that's kind of your own economic decision, but, you know, I'm not saying that we'd approve that, but, you know, you need to, you know, if you ask for none of it, you know, again, I think you might be wasting your time.
So possibly the road coming in and down to where it gets to the bottom there might be an option?
Do as much as you can.
Okay.
You know, I think what we could do is, he could bring in a paving plan to show us where, what he's, because, you know, you have his site plan here, it's a nice site plan, but he's gonna need to show the driveway coming off of that Crooks Road, or that, whatever that road is called, and then the circulation pattern in there, how he's going to circulate the traffic. But it's a requirement that be paved.
Thank you.
Anything else, Tony?
That's all I have.
Any other questions for the applicant? Yes.
So how much of the plan is complete now? Is it the first, the lowest section, and then the two
Yeah,
rows?
If we could put the site plan up,
that's not on.
There it is, there it is. sorry.
So the bottom and then the first 2 rows, are they done? Is
Use
that?
this pointer to sort of
Okay.
show what's.
Currently, what's there is this U-shaped RV building here.
Right.
This building here is currently there, and this boat building is currently there.
So the other parts are yet to be
And
constructed?
What I'd like to do this year is this one, and this one, those 3, which would leave approximately 2 more buildings to do for the future.
Thank you.
That would be this one and this one.
In the spirit of, trying to have a conversation be helpful, the other thing besides coming in and having, intentions of doing in a short period of time as much as you possibly could, such that the gravel is off the vehicles before they exit on the highway, you also might come in with a timeline as to when you're going to do it all.
Okay.
And again, there's no assurance of that. There's a fee for filing. That's why I'm trying to, it's your decision whether you want to.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak to this matter?
Thank you.
Commissioners?
I move for approval with all conditions as stated.
There's a motion to approve with all conditions. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
So to be clear, what conditions are there on the paving?
Right now, it's everything. What is that?
Okay. I think that's reasonable, but I just do think it might be some time before it has to actually be done. But I guess it is a shot across the bow that we want it done someday.
Yeah, if I could have some more time, it would sure help. He only gave me till next year.
I think
to have it all.
Pardon me, Scott or Kevin, isn't it typically, with like a building permit, it's 1 year it expires, doesn't it, or something?
Well, it is actually part of the building permit requirement. I mean, when you pull a building permit, so we already have sort of granted or given some leeway for those other buildings that have already been constructed.
Right.
And it's actually, the way that condition number 5 reads, it has to be finished by August 31st of 2016, so it's a year and 3 months,
Okay.
4 months.
Okay. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in the favor of the approval, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign, and that motion carries. Did you yeah, it's out of sequence. So I think we're on to item 3, which is a conditional use permit for a 1,050-ton fertilizer plant. Scott, you're reporting on this one?
Yes, Scott Anderson, County Planning Department. This is a conditional use permit amendment to amend conditional use permit 11-15, which was to allow a grain transfer facility at the Lyons area, and I think we all remember this. In your staff report, I provided a summary. On March 22nd, 2011, the County Commission heard an appeal by several adjacent property owners, and the County Commission recommended approval of conditional use permit 11-15 with 14 conditions, and I won't read all those because it's about 2 pages. Now the applicant, which is Fremar Elevator, has brought forth a conditional use permit amendment to construct an additional use on the subject property, and I will show you where that subject property is located. They would like to construct a 1,050-ton fertilizer plant, and they have provided some diagrams, and I'll go over those with you. The applicant has indicated that they will construct an 80-foot by 120-foot heated building, which will store chemicals and seed in. In addition, there will be several tanks and bins constructed, which will be used to load chemical and fertilizer into arriving trucks. These tanks and bins would be constructed over a concrete foundation, which would allow for monitoring of any leakage that might occur, and which would also provide a hard surface for any material to be cleaned off of. The applicant will have to comply with all state requirements from DENR for the storage of chemicals, which includes the use of line dikes to control any spillage. The proposed fertilizer and seed area is located, if you're familiar with Lyons, you can see the railroad trackage. This is the main road that goes through. Here's their large driveway. This is their office, and this is basically the big grain elevators and the storage facilities, and this is the area where they would be constructing the facility. There are several criteria which you as a planning commission should consider when you are evaluating this amendment, and I will go over those for you. Number one is the effect upon the use and enjoyment of other properties in the surrounding area for the uses already permitted and upon the property values in the surrounding area. It is unlikely that there will be any significant impacts on the use and enjoyment of the surrounding properties and property values. The areas to the west, north, and south are currently used for agriculture. The village's Lyons, as you can see, is located directly to the east and is the site of large manufacturing operations. The grain handling facility has been in operation for nearly 3 years without impacting the surrounding property values or land uses. Number two, the second criteria is the effect of the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant properties for uses predominant in the area. Lyons is identified as a rural service area. This agribusiness would fit well into that area. The agricultural community and uses in the area should benefit from this new expansion of the agricultural activity. Number three, that utilities, access roads, drainage, and other facilities are provided. The applicant constructed a new major access road into the site. The road has to be a width of 105 feet and 40 feet with a 40-foot wide approach onto County Highway 143. The approach onto County Highway 143 is constructed out of concrete. The wide width of the interior access road allows for 65 semis to be stacked while waiting to unload prior to the use of the scales. An additional stacking capability of 7 grain trucks is available after the scale. The proposed fertilizer facility would utilize this existing infrastructure, the roadway. Number four, that off-street parking and loading requirements of the zoning ordinance are met. The applicant was required to construct a minimum of 14 off-street parking spaces for the employees. On March 10th, I conducted a site visit to the area and confirmed that those parking spaces had been met. And those parking spaces, for your information, are basically lined up here to on the south side of the existing office. With the additional use of this fertilizer facility and the large structure that's being constructed, the applicant shall provide an additional 6 parking spaces, which would bring the total number of off-street parking spaces to 20. Number 5, that measures are taken to control offensive odors, fumes, dust, noise, vibration, and lighting, and so that none of those would constitute a nuisance. This proposed use will create some noise and dust, but the amount should not be significant enough to constitute a nuisance. The applicant already has some security lighting. Any lighting shall meet the requirements typically required by the Planning Commission and designed to reduce light pollution. The lighting should be of a shoebox style that directs the light downward. And the 6th criteria is health, safety, general welfare of the public and of the comprehensive plan. The proposed addition of a fertilizer plant should not impact the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. The applicant is required by state law to implement safety measures for any potential spill. The applicant has indicated that no anhydrous ammonia will be stored on the site. The property, this subject property, is located within the Water Source Protection Overlay District. A fertilizer plant and the storage of fertilizer or other agricultural chemicals is not a prohibited use within the overlay district. The applicant will have to meet all the requirements for tank storage as outlined in Article 11 of the Minnehaha County zoning ordinance, and that is the water source protection overlay district. And there's quite a list of requirements for the tank storage in Article 11. Lyons has been identified as a rural service area. The proposed use is a logical expansion of the grain handling facility, which was approved in 2011 and has been in operation for several years. Based on the information provided by the applicant, the proposed grain terminal is an appropriate use to the area, and the addition of the fertilizer storage facility will also provide an additional service to the greater agricultural community of the area. Staff is recommending approval of conditional use permit 15-16, which amends conditional use permit 1115 to allow the addition of a 1,050-ton fertilizer plant in addition to the grain terminal and associated railroad loading track with 16 conditions. The first 14 are a repeat of the 14 conditions that were approved in 2011. The last 2 conditions are new conditions, and those are number 15, that the applicant meet all South Dakota state requirements for containment and diking for above ground tanks storing fertilizer, and number 2, that the applicant shall meet all requirements for tank storage as outlined in Article 11 of the Minnehaha County zoning ordinance. And I have a couple of pictures here to show you. I know these are sort of going to be hard to see, but they are included in your packet. They show basically this 80 by 120 building and how the traffic will be flowing. These round circles represent above ground tanks. And this shows sort of a profile of the tanks. Here is, you can see what they look like, the tanks as they come down, and then they feed in. This little square thing is a truck. This is also the backside of it. Here you can see this is basically standing. You'll see this is the concrete apron that comes off the county highway, and then this is the office back here. You can see some of the parking here. This is the large grain handling facility. You can see the railroad cars. And here's the office. There's some additional parking on the west side of that office as well. This is you can sort of, if you look right here, you can see where the property, this is looking south. The property has been built up, and that's where that proposed 80 by 120 building is going to go. Here you can see it. It's sort of hard to see, but this is a little bit higher right here where they've done some site prep already. This is the office and the facility. So I would be glad to answer any questions that you have. I think maybe this is the best picture, which shows where this is going to go right here. The town of Lyons. Here's the large manufacturing area that you're familiar with that does the fire apparatus. This shows the tracking. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have. I know the applicant's here, and they have a PowerPoint presentation that they have for you as well.
Okay. Questions for Scott?
The applicant will answer questions.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Is the applicant here, and can you come forward so you can name an address and tell us about your project?
Steve Don. I'm the CEO of Central Farmers Co-op.
We'll get that loaded for you.
Most of my pictures are repeats of Scott's, but I'll try to explain in a little more detail.
Just use the arrows.
this gives a little better picture of the subject area. When you look straight south of the if you look straight south of the office, you'll see a small gray knoll surrounded by greener grass. That's an actual mound lift station. That's where the septic is. So the property would be west of that where we would build it. Okay, this is a photo that Scott had up. This would be the fertilizer storage facility. The 5 round circles that sit on the cement pad will be 205, 210 ton stainless steel hopper bottom beds. So all the fertilizer will be above ground. There won't be any flat storage. All the fertilizer containment will be above ground. The 2 tanks on the top of the page, those are overhead stainless steel hopper bottom tanks on a scale system, and that's where you blend the fertilizer, put it in the overhead bins, the semis drive underneath, and you drop the product in the bin. This is looking at those 5 tanks from a side view. As you can see, they're above ground. It's a volumetric blending system that you have different products in each one of those tanks. It's computer driven. You put your fertilizer analysis into the computer that you want, and the conveyor starts, and the product leaves the bin at a speed so you get a proper blending of the material. Takes it over to the right-hand side of the photo to a grain elevator leg. Grain elevator leg takes it up in the air and drops it into the overhead tanks that we looked at earlier. So there you can see the 2 overhead bins with the semi sitting underneath it. The 2 legs there. The other leg is for a receiving leg. We'll be bringing all the fertilizer in via truck to recharge the hopper bottom bins, either from Minneapolis, Winona, or our storage facility in Marion.
Technology.
So as Scott showed, this is just a diagram of the traffic flow. If you look on the right-hand side, those 4 bins, those will eventually be seed tanks. Again, hopper bottom, above ground. Those will not go in this year. To the left of that 80 by 120 chemical building are 3 liquid fertilizer tanks. Could be 3, could be 4. This is just set to scale. Those will not be going in immediately. Those will be flat bottom tanks. Those will be roughly 30,000 gallon tanks. They'll be flat bottom tanks in a dike, and the dike will be lined. Then right to the left of that is your fertilizer facility. So that's how the facility would lay out. That's one traffic flow pattern. This is another. Same facility, same everything, except rotated counterclockwise 180 degrees, or 90 degrees, excuse me. That's basically all I have. We realize that we have to follow all the state guidelines and permits. The chemical shed will be a slab-on-grade building. The building itself will be a diked building. The bulk storage tanks inside the building will sit inside a dike inside the building. So all the safety precautions will be followed. That's basically all I have, unless there's any questions from it.
Chairman, I have a couple questions. Okay, so what's your anticipated truck traffic load on this
Well,
facility?
it's 25 ton cement.
how much?
There's 1,000 tons of storage on site. So, you're like.
Revolving storage, right?
Well, that's gonna grow through the years. We hope it grows through the years, just like the grain facility. But, year one, we're budgeting for 3,000 to 4,000 ton retail out on the ground. And from there, we anticipate to grow, we want to grow, we hope to continue to grow.
Okay, well, the question I have is, the reason I'm asking about that is when we agreed to put the elevator there, first you said there would be no fertilizer chemical at this location. That was the first thing that was said at that time. And secondly, it was a stretch to put this on our county roads, a facility of the grain size as it was. And now we're gonna increase that traffic even more, and Commissioner Barr's gonna have to come up with more money to fix the road, and that's a definite concern. This is a huge facility.
I beg to differ and respectfully disagree. I said at this time,
Well,
we
that's
have
always
no
the outcome
indication.
of those
I
things,
did not say
understand
there
that.
was not going to be fertilizer chemical there. I said at this time, there was no plans. With the grain facility there, there's been a lot of desire for us to provide agronomy services to the producers that we are buying grain from.
And at that time, I think the concern was, you're gonna put this on a shallow aquifer. That was the concern with the chemical fertilizer at that time. And I know you can have all the containment facilities, and that's fine. But I'm still surprised that the state allows that. Since there are other facilities that are not allowed in these types of locations, which are not near as toxic as far as I'm concerned, potentially toxic.
We're just following the statements.
Other questions? Yes?
Recognizing that, you're not going to have anhydrous ammonia, what is the hazard with this liquid stuff? Is it, if it spills, do you have to evacuate?
Well, any fertilizer or chemical in a high concentration is going to be dangerous. The liquid fertilizer at a later date, like I said, would be in flat bottom tanks, upright tanks, in a dike of a specific capacity. The dike would be lined. And then SCOT said we'll have to follow all the provisions of, I believe it's Article 11 or Section 11, that could mandate us to have leak protection, monitoring wells, things like that. Whatever the state is going to require us to have.
The future of liquid tanks kind of piqued my interest as well, because you mentioned them, that they might come later. I think you said 30,000 gallon tanks. I forget how many number you think you want.
3 to 4.
3 to 4. Are they in the permitting process that you're going through with the state at this time?
The permitting process with the state really hasn't started.
Okay.
It will be though.
Yeah.
I don't really want to go down that road unless I know we can actually construct the facility.
Right. And I guess maybe a question for staff. Were you aware of the liquid tanks in the plans, Scott?
I thought it was all dry fertilizer.
Right. I think it maybe changes the perspective a little bit from my vantage point. Another question, and I certainly don't expect you to see the detail, but I think because of the layout, you can see. I think you referred to these as kind of mixing tanks or something.
Those are the overhead scales that the mixing is done as it comes out of the blend, out of the bends and goes over to the blend.
So do they store product?
Yes.
Okay, they do.
Those are 30-ton bags. One semi-load per bag.
30 tons.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe a question maybe for staff is, and honestly, as much BS as I could produce, you'd think I'd know more about fertilizer plants, but when I saw the 1,050 on there, I was wondering, what is that for sure? Is that a production or a storage number? And it's obviously a storage number because
The storage.
it's 5 at 510 for or whatever it was, 210, 5 at 210. So do we need to include these 230,000 in there, and should the permit be for 1,070 ton?
Well, I think
60 would be.
I think it needs to cover all of them.
Including those,
Yeah.
right. So we really are looking at 1,070.
You know, those will not store fertilizer, those will store fertilizer for a day.
It's still on the premises, and if you don't want to get in trouble from a permitting process, so you'd be ahead to have the number
Correct.
at your higher number. Any other questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, before we take final action, obviously we'll hear from other people, and so
Certainly.
we might have them back. Thank you.
Thank you. Or is there anyone else in the audience that'd like to speak to this item? Yes, please come forward, state your name and address, and tell us what you're about.
My name is Scott Burgraff. I live at 46663 252nd Street. I live on the same corner of this grain terminal. Now, it's failed to mention that I believe there's 7 water holding ponds above ground around this facility on the premise site. One of them lies just east of the proposed site they have there now. What I would like to see happen is all our government agencies look out for each other. Now we have the planning board right here, we have the planning commission in front of us, we have the county commissioners, we have the water department. They have 13 wells in the Skunk Creek Aquifer there. One well lies just southwest of the facility, a matter of a few hundred yards. One's north, and one's northeast. 3 of them right there, real close by. And then we got 4 more farther to the southwest. Back in the 90s, the highway department said they wanted a farm-to-market highway, so they took and constructed the 254th Avenue as a blacktop all the way through. Well, there was 2 miles that was not roads there at all. And one of them was from 467 to 466. And in that road, there's a crook in the road where the bridge is not straight. Well, right north of that bridge, when they were getting ready to construct that highway, it's either the Wildlife and Fisheries or the EPA found a black-headed bullhead, which is extinct, which remitted them from not making that road straight there. So now we got that in consideration too. If any of these things leak, for some reason, a failure somewhere. Well, if it was going to be 1,050 and you're going to add 70 more ton to it, that'd be 1,120 if you add the figures together.
I did my math wrong, and you're correct. Thank you.
So, with these holding ponds there, and then I also consider, has the Wildlife and Fisheries been contacted about this with Skunk Creek right there? Has DNR been contacted? Has the city of Sioux Falls been contacted with the wells there? I have done some checking, and some of the places have not seen the letter or do not know if they have received the letter. I've been to the mayor's office. He doesn't know if they have seen the letter or received the letter, or if it was sent to him. And how come Deb Langer, who lives on 467 north of this, has property kitty corner to the northeast at 252nd and 467th? There's a well right on that corner, which is closer than Deb Langer's property. Then the city should have received the letter if Deb got one. So with none of these steps being taken prior to this, I see we got a failure in our agencies working. And if we're going to have dry fertilizer on the premise, if we're getting it from one facility to the other, how are we getting it there? By conveyor? Now, with me living right there, I do get corn chaff up in my yard. So we do have windage. So dust travels. Are we going to look out for the people in Sioux Falls, 160-some thousand people who are with the water department sucking water out of the Skunk Creek Aquifer there? Are concerned for their health? We got a lot of people here looking at it. We got agencies that I don't think were contacted, which should have been with the enormity of this project. There's more lives at stake than one person wanting to get his facility going big. Lyons has no ag facilities in the town itself, so it's not an ag area, an ag town. Since the elevator was burned down, there went all the ag businesses in Lyons. I think we need to take consideration and protect the government agencies together. Not just look out for yourself and how much money is being put back into the county. I was the one that sent the letter to the planning commission about the elevators, and right following them comes the chemicals and fertilizer. I'm glad you brought that up, that you know that it was at the meeting prior to this, Mike. Well, I think we need to take a hard look at this thing with that much water above ground, because that water, it was told those ponds were put there to get the fluctuation in the aquifer so it doesn't put so much pressure on the facility. So we know that water's moving, and all that water flows southwest. And we got those extinct bullheads down there, so I think we need to take a look at whether we need to get this thing introduced to the wildlife and fishery, game fish and parks, DNR. We've got a lot of stuff in concern here. I hope it takes consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions, Mr. Chairman? Yes.
Besides the notification, do you have any advice on how you think that this should be set up if it's allowed?
Well, what we have, if you know much about ag and it's coming, I don't know if it's in here yet, but if you got over 1,000 gallons of fuel on your property, you have to have that in a holding tank. And it has to be a concealed bladder. It can't be folded, mitered at the corners. It has to be a solid tank of some sort. Now, when you take and put in a lime bedded area, I don't see how you consider that a sealed bladder. It'll just help leaching.
So what would you like us to do besides notify these other agencies? And
Well, I think this thing with the aquifer being right there, I don't think this is the place to put this type of facility. I think we've got to put this where we don't have so much, we're not so close to the water table. We don't have no black dirt there to speak of. There's a lot of sand, and they knew that when they put this facility in there. All the sand that was dug out of these ponds and used for their trailways and so forth, and that once that stuff hits that sand, it goes, nothing stopping it. And we have that with our septic systems today too, that if you got too much sand in it, perks too fast into the water table, you got to redo your septic system, your drain field. So somehow we got to figure out how we're going to hold this if there was an accident. And you can't look at accidents aren't going to happen. Accidents aren't going to happen. We got to prevent something somehow or relocate.
thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Bergeron? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here in the audience that'd like to speak to this item? Mr. Barth?
Scott, so where are we at with, talking to these other entities and notifications?
Well, it's not a requirement that we notify game fish and parks, and I did provide all the information to Greg Anderson, water superintendent for the city of Sioux Falls. He got a copy of the staff report, all the narrative, basically everything that went out in the packet, the plans, the location.
It's kind of, if I may, I think I heard you say that you were really unaware of the plan for liquid fertilizers, so then the city would also be.
I noticed it does say in their narrative that they are going to have liquid. For some reason I was thinking it was dry, but it does say here in the narrative.
What page are you on?
The one that's on their letterhead.
I see.
The third paragraph, it says any liquid fertilizer will be stored in a state-approved line dike.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So Scott, state-approved lined dike, that would mean that DENR would know about it?
DNR, yeah.
The lining process is an impermeable barrier, between the product and the rest of the environment.
I don't want to indicate that I'm an expert on DNR regulations, but the way I wrote the condition was that condition number 15, that the applicant has to meet all of the state requirements for containment and diking for above-ground tanks storing fertilizer, whether that's liquid or dry. It just says they have to meet the requirements. And then 16 is they have to meet the requirements of our ordinance for that over the ground, the water source protection overlay district. And there's some specifics in there on what we want for storage, lining, everything's spelled out in there.
Well, liquid fertilizer is just a part of the fertilizer. If you got dry, you're gonna have liquid. That's just business today.
You know, I wasn't aware of that. I missed it. I'm not sure whether the gentleman at the city water department would have picked up on that reference in their letter. You know, notwithstanding my bad math, we also have a slightly bigger facility than we anticipated as well.
Sure.
Commissioner Byrne?
Could we have Steve from the co-op come back?
Yes.
So have you been in touch with like the DNR, or have you had
No.
any contact?
I was in contact with Greg Anderson.
Okay.
And he has been in contact with the state.
Okay.
And I don't want to quote Mr. Anderson. He did talk about a 500 feet setback from a well, and we're well over a 500 foot setback from any wells. And again, I'm not quoting him, it's just after I got done talking to him, he said, well, if you guys can meet the state requirements, I guess you can meet the state requirements. But I was in contact with him last Thursday or Friday. And as far as notification of people, we did send notification to everybody that was on the list that we did get from the planning zone.
Mr. Chairman, you know, obviously, it's not just your storage facility, but there's also the folks that are transporting it. Are you bringing this material in by rail and then outgoing by truck, or?
No, it'll all be coming by truck.
Okay. And, you know, I guess there is also the aspect that these trucks, just like every truck, are going to have, you know, perhaps be drizzling some of this stuff, you know, coming in and going out, and are currently drizzling it everywhere else they're going these days. Will there be any, you know, stuff there in case there is a spill in the transfer from the vehicles? Do you have?
Well, yeah, they'll be as far as the dry fertilizer, they'll be dumping on a cement. If you look on the left side of the picture, you'll see the back end of a semi. You'll be sitting on a cement slab with a conveyor in the cement. The conveyor comes up out of the cement, drops it in the elevation line, takes it up and fills the tanks. Okay, so that's a cement slab, so that can be swept up, you know, right into the conveyor. You have zero contamination. As far as bringing in the liquid chemical, the liquid fertilizer, that would all be offloaded inside the building, in the dike building, putting in the tanks. And that building is a dike inside the dike.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. Technically, for much more discussion, we probably have a motion or.
I will, like I say, there's a lot of concern with this, but I also know how these things are built, and they are built for containment. My concern still is over the aquifer, but I would move for approval.
Motion to approve, is there a second? Can I ask a clarification maybe before the second, Mike? Is this for the corrected math? What the additional 60 on
Additional
2015
ton,
should be
yes.
1110.
It
Is
really
it
doesn't
for
make
is
any
it for the
difference.
dry that's presented, or does it include also the liquids?
Well, there's two
Your
things
motion.
he's talking about. To me, they're kind of irrelevant, because that's actually where they say it's just mixed in there and dumped in the trucks on their way out to the fields, is what it's really used for.
The liquid.
It doesn't concern me that much.
Okay. So you're including it in the motion just for clarification?
Yes.
The liquid is included. Is there a second to this motion to approve the amended size including the liquid?
Well, for discussion, I'll second it.
Okay.
But let me then go on to what I would like to discuss.
All right.
You know, I wonder if we shouldn't redouble our efforts to do notification and you know, give a little more time for folks that might be involved to respond to the possible issues.
Is this Anderson you're speaking about? That's Sioux Falls water person?
Yeah.
He knows. What more are you gonna notify? Tell him again. I mean, he's been notified. And of course, they're gonna say if it's within the state setbacks, it should be okay with the city of Sioux Falls too.
Commissioner Barth, I guess I kind of am on your side of a little ounce of caution here.
Well, if you are going to do that, then I would like to have a list of people you want me to notify. Because, I mean, is it just Game Fish and Parks? Is it EPA? Is it DENR? I mean, Department of Agriculture? Who are we all going to notify?
Because currently all the DNR has to be contacted for them to have a permit to sell the stuff. That's required. They have to meet all state requirements. To me, you're doing what's already been done as far as the key regulatory people. And like I say, Sioux Falls City Water is a big one, but he knows.
And DENR has lots of rules and regulations that they'll have to go by.
Certainly
But
do.
as long as he has talked to Mr. Anderson, I somewhat wish we would have had I don't know, letter or something from him. I guess maybe because he was here the last time. So I kind of half expected him to be here tonight.
Once in a while, I feel a little bit like we're looking at land use, right? But land use also takes into considerations, in my opinion, it's threat to natural resources. It's pretty easy to say that somebody else is watching that for us. That's what I sometimes get worried about, We have a watershed overlay, or water protection overlay district.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Our approval doesn't necessarily mean that there are no future bumps on the road. And there is an opportunity for folks who suddenly realize they got this letter, what the heck does it mean? And for them to respond. And so, potentially people in the East Dakota Water District or with the city of Sioux Falls or the DNR would have a chance to appeal it to the county commission, the full commission.
Okay. So what you're suggesting is that we might take action recommending approval and still ask for notifications part of the county.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So we could do it on two motions. We could approve the project and then make a second request for staff to.
Yeah, just instruct staff to do that. Yeah. Okay.
What do you think, Scott?
I just want to know who you want me to all notify.
You got a phone
Because
number?
my concern is, my concern is I met the requirements of the ordinance, and that was to notify the adjacent property owners. I did go above that. I contacted and scanned all the information and sent it to Mr. Anderson, Greg Anderson.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I just want to make sure if you want to do this, if you want me to notify people, I just send out notification again. I just want to know.
Jeff, are you saying that you want East Dakota Rural Water or East Dakota Water District notified?
They might have some understanding of the situation beyond my own.
And I did discuss this with them
Oh,
on
you did?
Thursday when I was there.
When you were at the meeting for representing me?
I think in the notifications, it might be nice just to, emphasize the liquid.
Have what?
size. The liquid storage and
Okay.
the size change as well. Any further discussion? Got a motion and a second to approve with stipulations and the modification on size, as well as a notation that this includes liquid storage as well. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
So it was unanimous then?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Barth, did you want to instruct staff to do something?
I think I'll just talk to them about this, I promise I will,
Okay.
and we'll see where we can go. Maybe if you guys want to do that, that'd be fine with me too. Would you, Mr. Chairman, you can't make a motion, so I'll make a motion for you if you'd like, to redouble the efforts of notification, specifically mentioning the liquid aspect.
And the size change, and included would be East Dakota, DNR, and maybe the city water department again. Special emphasis on.
I'll make that motion.
It's a motion, and is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to item 4, which is a conditional use permit to expand an existing dairy farm.
We have dairy farms in this county?
Very so. Kevin, I believe you're presenting the staff report.
Chicken farms.
Yeah. Not a big one somewhere.
There's Preston's.
Is that the closest one?
No, there's one up by Flint, but I drive every way to work. Well, no, I think a lot of the questions just got answered.
Bonnie is feeling the pressure from the tree removal. She's just ready to crawl under a rock.
Pretty cool. I mean, somebody else had asked my questions.
I'll put your
Go ahead, Kevin.
number on the screen
All right,
tomorrow.
I'm Kevin Hookman of the Planning Department. This is a conditional use permit number 1519 to expand an existing dairy operation from 3,500 animal units to 5,160 animal units. The property is located approximately 4 miles to the west of Baltic. The parcel has a large Class A concentrated animal feed operation on it currently. In the year 2000, it was permitted for 2,000 animal units, and an expansion was made in the year 2004. It was permitted for 3,500 animal units. Currently, the operation is still operating under the permit from 2004. The petitioner would like to make several changes to his operation, including expanding buildings and animal units to include 5,160 animal units. The operation is primarily composed of dairy cows, but it also has calves and heifers that are raised for replacements of the dairy cows as they go dry. One dairy cow in the county ordinance is equal to 1.4 animal units, and the heifer and calves are equal to 1 animal unit. The petitioner has noted that he would like his facility to have 2,400 dairy cows and 1,800 heifers, which amounts to 5,160 animal units with the county's animal units. The petitioner has noted he's going to be making several updates to his facility, including updating his milking parlor to hold more animals at one time, so they can get through the same amount or more animals milked at the same time, so he can have more animals on his property. Second, you'd also have a different manure management system, which I'll cover in a little bit. The manure management system, it will have is sand separated right now, where the machine currently uses wastewater from the lagoons where it's going to be used for parlor water, so it's not going to be recycling the same water over. And I'll let him explain that a little bit more and how that works. As part of the conditional use permit, new CAFOs have to meet setback guidelines. The setback guidelines for this particular property become very large. For a city or municipalities, pointer, it's 5¼ miles, which is this red line here. And then for housing, dwellings, and parks, it's a little over 3 miles, which are these 2 lines here. In the absence of meeting these setback requirements, the petitioner can provide evidence of, present new technology management practices, topographic features, soil conditions, or other factors which substantiate the reduction in minimum separation criteria. And he has presented several best management practices to comply with this, or to as his requirement. Part of that involves microbial treatment to the waste system, new separation system, rapid growth trees for the wind action and shelter belt, fly control, dead animal pickup, liquid manure that is put on the farmland is injected, dairy provides dust control and adheres to the DENR. Besides the current operation and the proposed operation, we'll have to get a general water pollution control permit from the DENR. And this permit will likely include lots of general environmental issues as well. To consider a conditional use permit, you have to go through review the following factors: the effect upon the use and enjoyment of the property and surrounding area, if use is already permitted, and upon property values within the surrounding area. The primary surrounding area is already ag and cropland, which will have very little effect on, but there is a certain amount of single-family dwellings on acreages and on farmsteads. And this property, or this land use, has and will produce a certain amount of odor that may be considered a nuisance at times, depending on weather conditions. The petitioner has noted that most of the traffic will be using the 1 3/4 mile road to the county road, and dust control will be placed on that portion of the road. The effect upon normal orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant properties for uses predominant in the area. Again, the land area being predominantly ag, this may even be a benefit to the ag area because you can use the waste that is generated as manure on the fields. But the odor may be a detractor on any sort of future residential use in the area. The utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities are provided. The dairy will use existing facilities. There will be a proposed new driveway on the site plan, and we'll go over the site plan in a little bit. That'll be located because there's the moving of a barn in front of it. But other than that, the facility will be mostly contained. The off-road parking and loading requirements are met. The facility is located in a large lot and has plenty of off-road parking and loading. The measures are taken to control offensive odor, fumes, dust, noise, and vibration, including lighting, so that none of these will constitute a nuisance. As a major portion of this property, odor will be a major concern. The odor control plan was part of the last conditional use permit that was brought up by Dr. Dwayne S. Bundy, and that odor control permit, the provisions of that is going to be part of the best management practices that the petitioner submitted. And part of this will also include monitoring of the odor Technologies are used to detect certain gases and odors to determine whether base it from year to year and categorize them. Periodically, this should be done to demonstrate that odor is not becoming worse. So recognize that in no case that odor can be completely eliminated though. With the health, safety, and general welfare of the public and the comprehensive plan. This expansion request will likely have no significant increase to the public health, safety, and welfare because it's an existing facility. And as it goes to the comprehensive plan, the comprehensive plan does state that it is intended, the area that this is located in is intended to be preserved for farm and related use where such activities can freely operate without the need to impose restrictions due to competing uses. But likewise, the same plan, 1998 plan, says that the areas should regulate concentrated animal feeding and processing operations to protect the environment, quality, and minimize conflicts with human activities. All right, I'll go over the site plan a little bit. So this is the site plan that was submitted. It mostly includes a large freestyle barn here, which is going to be the reason why it needs a new access because it's going to block this driveway. So a new access would come off right here, about 3/4 of a mile to the west of the county road. The current lagoons are located right here, and he has 4 of them. And the new manure management system would likely require another lagoon, so he's proposing to put another one right here. Along that, there is dimly here in green shown an area for a shelter belt of trees along the berm for the new lagoon. In addition to that, there is several new additions to barns for heifer raising in open barns or lots. This is the road going west into the property. It is well maintained. It isn't necessarily ruddy or anything like that. Looking at the property from the west again, or from the east. This is the site of the new freestall barn on the north side of the property. And you can see the trees in the background that were planted after the last conditional use permit, or some of them were planted then, and they've grown quite substantial since then. This is an older lagoon pit that is now just stacks dry manure, and they haul it to the lagoons by truck from this location. This is the location of the heifer barn, and kind of in the distance will be the location for the future lagoon as well, to the south side of the property. And this is kind of the heifer barn looking towards the southeast. Staff finds that the proposed K-flow expansion is appropriate use in the commercial agricultural area of the comprehensive plan. Staff recommends approval of the conditional use with the following conditions. And I will note that I've added one condition since sending this to you, and I've made a change, so I'll just skip over number 5 when I read through them. The facility shall be limited to 5,160 animal units in size. The entire facility, including existing and future expansion, shall be fully permitted by the state of South Dakota, and it shall remain in good standing. Copies of state-approved nutrient management plans shall be filed with Minnehaha County Planning Department. The facility shall comply with all the best management practices that were listed with the submitted narrative and was received with the application and listed in the staff report. And then I'll skip over 5 because I'll read that one in a little bit. Shelter belt trees shall be planted and irrigated before the use of the proposed holding pond. Any dead trees shall be replaced within 1 season. The shelter belt trees that are shown on the site plan shall be planted utilizing a minimum of Minnehaha County Conservation District standards. The approval must be obtained by the township for the construction of new road access. Annual, and then this would be my recommended additions and amendment. Annual copies of the executive summary of an executive summary of the approved nutrient management plan shall be filed with the Minnehaha County Planning Department, which shows the sites proposed for nutrient application and the means of application. Copies of the full nutrient management plan shall be provided upon county request. And then I would like to replace the condition number 5 with this condition that clarifies it a little bit better than the initial one. This states, odor monitoring shall be completed during the one season within 2 years of the CUP approval, and then at least one season for every 4 years thereafter. Odor monitoring shall be completed by a qualified expert who is approved by Minnehaha County Planning and Zoning Department. The odor monitoring shall test for odor, hydrogen sulfide, and ammonia at and around the site. Each season of monitoring shall include at least 2 days of on-site collection of emissions. Similar data collection methods shall be used for year to year to allow for comparisons. So, with that, is there any questions?
Kevin, I have one right away related to your replacement number 5. What do you define as a season?
I guess I was defining it as a season as a 1 year season.
So it's really a year.
Yep. Yeah, twice per year, and so that way you can say, okay, once this year and once 2 years from now, and call that one season.
Okay, so twice a year during that one. So in the first sentence, order monitoring shall be completed during one season within 2 years. So within the first 2 years of operation, they've got to do testing how often then? What's your testing?
So it'll be 2 rounds of testing, so it'll be like a July and September.
Okay.
Or something
Right.
like that.
Sounds like it's picked up in minutes, I think. Yes, go ahead.
You have a comment about them constructing a new access. Do you mean like the entrance? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So the barn is going to go in the place along this driveway.
Okay.
So they will not have any access to this portion of their property. Or they'll have to have an access through here, and that's where the milking trucks are going to go from that access. And this access then will be, the use of this access will be greatly reduced because there's not a whole lot going on right here.
When you say access, are you saying like culverts are going to have to be permitted there, or what?
Yes.
Drainage? Okay.
He will have to get culverts and approval from the township.
Any other questions for Kevin? Thank you. Is the applicant here? Can you come forward and tell us about your project?
Yes. Sure. Hi, my name is Lynn Bedline, 46945 251st Street, Baltic, South Dakota. Thank you. I just I gave you all copies of a PowerPoint that's in here, and I mean, I don't expect to go through it in detail, but it describes some of the different things that we've done for odor control. If you recall, that staff brought up that we had we started in 2000 with our first conditional use permit, and then another one in 2003, and there was quite a bit of concern then, dealing with odors and the size and scale. We've grown. When I got out of college in '86, we milked 42 cows, so we've grown. Just moved up over time, and I think what I'd like to, this is an expansion of animal units, of course, but as I look, some of our farm, 2000 was really when we started, the beginning of the larger portion, the new portion, kind of moving out of the older facilities that were cobbled up together. And some of these barns, we put a barn up in 2001, a barn in 2002, one in 3, one in 4, and then one in 5. And so they didn't all fit perfectly like you would a greenfield site. So we have some really logistics problems that I'm trying to fix. Our waste system, so the cows lie in sand beds. And, so a real big part of my system that I want to improve, when I did it, I was one of the first ones to put sand separator, mechanical separator in the country. And so we weren't sure how it would work. Now they've got a little more modern systems, and that building now is nearing 15 years old. Everything's rusted out, and I need to fix it. And it used lagoon water to wash the sand out of the manure. So the manure falls in the stalls, gets scraped into the manure system, and we take the sand back out and put it back in the stalls and continue to reuse it. So this new system puts a closed loop, and we build a channel for conveyance, and we've figured out how to, I'll just go to this picture, to put this channel down the center of our barns and really hit what's this sand separation building. And it's called a closed loop system. So that's really the centerpiece of what I want to do, is take the old facility, and with that I have the one barn, the barn on the upper portion by the trees that I'd be constructing that would be taking away the road. I keep my cows that are just going to have calves, and the cows that just had calves, kind of the most important cows in the dairy, I keep them down in my old barns now that were built in the 80s. And so it's kind of not the best place for them, so we want to build another barn and put it by the milking parlor. And of course we want to use those old facilities, but I want to put smaller heifers in the old facilities. So some of that, and then just maybe in a 1 to 2 year plan, on the lower portion of that, I've got a square box near our sand stacking area that I would we move heifers off site to another location. And some of these younger heifers would like to breed them on the farm. We artificially inseminate everything. It's kind of maybe a 1 to 2 year plan to streamline it, so we don't have to truck cattle back and forth. So, and then the other part, the increase in cow numbers. My milking parlor was constructed in 2004, and it was a herringbone style parlor. The milking center has 48 milking stalls in it. It runs 24 hours a day. And some of those milking stalls are the wiring in there to run the electronics is rusting, and the stalls need replacement. So the new style parlor, what most areas put in is a parallel style stall. So in the place of 48 old herringbone stalls, I can put 60 stalls. So for me, the efficiency part that helps pay for a lot of this renovation is being able to milk 350 more cows with the same amount of people in the same amount of time in the same building. So that's a big part of it. And I realize that we did have a lot of concern when I stood before this group before and was expanding. We worked hard. Back then we trucked a lot of manure away from here. We've now purchased a drag hose system where, the waste is pumped, as far as 3-4 miles, and we own the equipment, and it's direct injected in the ground, into the soil with a toolbar applicator. It's really streamlined and helped the truck traffic in and out. And, we still bring forages in. We have used dust control. And the trees were very successful. It's amazing how fast they grew. So in here, and we irrigated them. So that really helps, I think, around our waste system, and we continue to use microbials in the waste system. But I think the sand separation system, not using the lagoon water because we would send it through one cell to the next cell to the next cell to clean it up and bring it back. So now that flow would just stop. We would send liquid right out to the waste cell to just stay there, to not send it around in a circle. So that is, that's the first of those systems came out a few years ago. So is there?
Just have one quick question, Lynn. How many acres is this at your nutrient management plan? I mean, 1,600 animal units. So how many acres?
Yeah, well, we're nearly 4,000, I think, now on the plan. I have enough for it, and I know I could easily, it seems like it, I've got about 5, 6 phone calls already if I'm gonna be able to put manure on, so I don't have a real big problem. I can't honestly say I have it dialed into the exact acres, like, if I were to, get your approval today, I mean, that's, part of the DNR permit. But to your question, we have enough on the plan now to accommodate it. And one of the things I'll say about the additional waste cell, the state requirements were only for 270 days when we did this. My preference is to have more than 270 days of storage. I just like the comfort, of not being close to full. So, and if there's any, I don't know if this is a time with the conditions. One of the things that I'd like to speak to, and I had in the back, and I just make, it's maybe second to last page. I just want to, the last page, we did send a mailing out to, a mile or so circle. It ended up being 40 people, and we had an open house a week ago. Just, if anybody had any concerns, and I made a copy of that letter with your package. But one of the things that I just wanted to speak with you about on the conditions that Mr. Hookman talked about, I think he took the guidance from our conditions that were placed upon us in 2003. And we had a Dr. Dwayne Bundy. We had so much concern over the odors that I searched to find somebody that knew something about odors. And I'd hired this Dr. Dwayne Bundy, and he was in front of the commission and these bodies a couple different times. And we did testing thereafter, and I delivered those tests to the planning board. And we didn't see any significant. The tests looked good, and I think at that time, I don't know that we completed the conditions of that permit. Now, the only anxiety, I don't mind the odor. I mean, I'm not scared of that. I think that we have done a pretty good job of mitigating. You're never going to completely get rid of the odors. I always keep trying to improve the system with these upgrades as new technology comes. But just one thing that I don't know, I don't know if there's people out there that do this testing. And one of the concerns I have, I know after we did the odor testing last time, a lot of folks in South Dakota called me concerned that I would offer up something like that. And it was because, Minnehaha County is really looked upon as setting a standard in that. And people, I got the gray area questions on how do you comply with that and those sort of things. So I thought I'd bring it up to you. Of course, it's just, that was one, I think, it's not part of the ordinance, and I think, depending on, I think we've proven ourselves. I don't think we've had a lot of, odor complaints, and I think some of the fears, weren't realized.
Mr. Bodwin, just so I understand this, so you're concerned about the newly reworded number 5, where you have to test a couple times, 1 year in the first 2 years, and then every 4 years, because of the lack of access to people that can perform the test?
Well, I don't think, I asked somebody from the State Dairy Association, in the last 10 years, I've tried to stay out of all the zoning stuff, so I haven't really followed it, and I asked him, are there any other operations or that he knows of that required that, and he didn't know of any, and I said, do you know of, where you could access the equipment, and he forwarded an email to somebody at South Dakota State, and I didn't get a reply, and that was just this Saturday, because I just saw it at noon today, the revised one, so I don't have a good answer. My concern is, well, I have to go find somebody to do it and contract with somebody, who I'm not, I guess I'm just not sure where they're at. And I don't want to, I don't want to shirk my responsibility in odor control at all or anything by not saying I don't want to test. I just, I think the best management practices that we're doing are the things that, and we've proven that. So.
Any additional questions from Mr. Bodwin?
Maybe later.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that'd like to come forward and speak to this item? Please state your name and address and tell us what you're about.
Hi, I'm Deb McGee Langer, and I live at 25174 467th Avenue, Colton, South Dakota. I have a letter here from my mother because she is a landowner in Section 9, and she has given me permission to speak on her behalf. So who do I give this to, Scott? My concern is, and we're farmers too, and we live right across, we have a farm right across from Lynn's. My concern are the roads. Kudos to have more dairy, trust me, more cows, kudos to you, Lynn. But my thing is the roads. We have a farm that is between 252nd Street and 251st Street on 469th Avenue, which is right across from Lynn's. That road between those two, 252nd and 1st, are very hilly. And we farm off that on Section 9 to the west of Lynn. There is one part we have young drivers there, granddaughter living there learning to drive, plus we have about 4 other young people that are driving over there learning to drive. But at our place, which is at 25165 469th Avenue, where my daughter and her husband live, the Cruises, you come right over the hill and there's 2 driveways right there. I would like to have it where we would have a sign saying caution, hidden driveways, because it's very dangerous there. Even when we come out with our grain, I know Lynn's workers are coming, I know they're hauling different things there. It's a very dangerous road. It's very dangerous. There's many times my mother's driven it, she's had to get way over to the side because there's cars just coming back and forth. And I understand you have to do that with farming, but there's a lot of stuff going in within that section. Also, I would like to have another sign at the corner of 251st Street and 469th Avenue saying blind intersection. It's very dangerous. It is very dangerous there in that corner where the old schoolhouse was at. That's very dangerous. Because you can't see someone coming over the hill and someone coming this way. And we've been using it for years, but the more I think about it, young drivers out there, there's quite a few of them, that would be dangerous for them. Plus, I'm looking at our workers too that are hauling grain. And then we're out there planting because it's dangerous out there. So my concern is I'd like to have those signs up there.
Okay, thank you. Any
for the safety of, for his workers, for the safety of our family and all the other people that are out there, because my daughter is going to be building a home out there too. So there's going to be a lot of people building around there using that. So that's my concern.
Mr. Barth?
Where exactly is that blind intersection? You mentioned
It's
the
at,
intersection.
okay,
It's not
across the road.
not the township intersection itself.
No, that it's, if you, it's on 469th Avenue
Going
between,
south.
yeah, going south at, starts at 251st Street. You're coming and you'll see a grove of trees and you're going, all of a sudden there's a hill and there's a driveway right there. And then there's a lower driveway. But if you're coming over that hill really fast, which I know we sometimes do on gravel roads, you won't be able to stop.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience that'd like to speak to this item?
My name is Dennis Williams, 46924 252nd Street. I'm just on the south side of the same section as this proposal. And I just wanted to comment that I've lived there for 4 years, and most of the time I don't smell anything. It doesn't do anything to concern me. And I think if my neighbor wants to implement best practices and upgrade his system, I'm all for it.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Anyone else? Commissioners?
You want to address your sign issue? Is that something you work with the township on?
We can always ask the township officials.
Yes, we have a township clerk right here.
I Bill Maddow on the township board for about 20 years, and so maybe, I'm not on anymore.
Oh, way to clear yourself.
But there's a guy sitting here that is, so, maybe if the township won't put the signs there, I'll put the signs there, so
I think it's only to our benefit, really.
No,
Safety.
I agree. I agree completely because, we had one of our employees had one minor accident on that corner, and then, right by, where our daughter is bad. It's a really bad hill, so.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the township does maintain that road there though, doesn't it? Then it should be their responsibility to put the signs up. If nothing
Yeah.
else, for safety reason.
Yeah, no, I'll speak with them when I'm getting permission for the road.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioners? Your wishes?
Approval.
Motion for approval, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I would just say, we were here in the early days. We were here when Lynn first came in. We were here with hogs. Usually if you were talking 2,400 cows in one spot, people would be going through the roof. And, so I think it speaks volumes for how well the Beaudoins have done with their ability to maintain a good livestock facility in a really heavily populated area when you get right down to it. Congratulations for that.
Mr. Chairman, before you take a vote, I
Yes,
want
sir.
a clarification on condition number 5.
Yeah.
Because right now, I just want to know if you're voting on the way staff recommended it, or if you want to amend it to accommodate the petitioner, or what you want to do.
And number 9 is not accepted.
Oh, and the condition number 9, which we added.
Is it as presented by Kevin, or, it's a great question.
Could you put those back up,
Yeah.
please, Kevin?
Just so we don't have confusion,
yeah.
a couple weeks from now, and Lynn says what was
Or a
approved.
couple of years
You're a
from
bit
now.
like deer in headlights right
Yeah.
now, so it's a great question.
And these would be the amendments.
Fundamentally about number 5, because 9 basically he's required to have that on him anyway, so that's not.
DNR requires that.
Yes.
On which one? Number 9?
Number
Nine
nine
is
is required. If you
Okay.
want a copy, of it, you can get it.
Okay.
It's 5.
My view is, I guess, that their operation currently is doing awfully well without having any additional pressures on reports.
Would be 5 as we've got it before.
We can show you that.
5 is, this is basically a clarification on 5. 5 originally is basically the same thing, except for it's not worded as well.
And in the original permit, the air quality monitoring was or was not required?
In the last permit, the requirement was to follow the odor control plan, which stated that they were gonna monitor, and it didn't really give a definition of how long or how when. It just said that they were gonna monitor.
I would like to hear what Lynn's views on this again, if I might.
Mr. Burgoyne?
What we did then is, to try to talk about odor technology, this Dr. Dwayne Bundy was in, and then I think everybody got used to him, and, I was trying to do it, prove that we could do this and reduce the odor somewhat. And prior to that, we'd made this mistake, putting aerators in that I'll never touch again, and that just made it worse. And so it was a mistake, and I had to try to rectify it. So I put that in there, because Dr. Bundy thought that we could, show a decrease in odor. And so we brought that, to the Planning Commission, and I think we did it on two different times, and brought that, and then the Planning Commission at that time was satisfied and didn't require it.
What is your preference on this?
Well, I'd rather not have it because I don't know who or where does this. And my biggest concern is that if you do it, it starts a precedent, and if it becomes a difficult one, then every other person that comes in afterwards or in different counties, and I'm not,
So are you advocating having neither 9 or 5?
No, I leave 9. I would like to see 5 taken out.
Mr. Burgoyne, if I understand, please, maybe I don't. The current process for washing the sand and everything, you're changing your process going forward, correct? Thank you. I guess I'd weigh in on this question number 5, even though I'm kind of getting myself probably in a Robert's Rules issue. We have a motion in a second that includes either this 5 or the 5 that was presented by Kevin. So if we don't clarify which one you meant, we want to do anything different, then we're going to change, deny and or have an amendment, then you're going to give me all in nods. But let me say this: I think that testing every 4 years indefinitely is onerous. But at the same time, he's changing a process, and we don't know how successful that process would be. So some level of testing for a short period of time might be appropriate. That's my thoughts.
If you knew how to get the test done, because it sounds like those people are changing too.
He was very successful in finding someone that was very convincing. I was here when it was done before, and I think that he did that because he needed to have an expert, and he got one. I think he can do it again. That's my opinion.
So would it be cleaner if we withdrew the motion and started over?
It might make me easy.
Okay, let's do that. That's what I don't. I'll withdraw my motion, and whoever seconded can withdraw that. And let's start over with another motion.
Mike, did you second or who seconded?
I did, I think.
Do you want to?
I'll withdraw.
Okay. So, without motion, what would you like to do?
Tell Mike what motion to make.
Well, the only thing I understand Wayne's concern, it's never been tested. So you might put in there one-time test 2 years from now, and then.
With results that maybe show equal to or improved odor control.
Yes.
Is that your motion?
That would be my motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and the motion carries. Thank you.
So that's to test one time in the next 2 years.
In the next 2
Yeah.
years.
Okay.
I think we're on to let's see here, old business. And there's none. New business, the comprehensive plan. We've got a meeting tomorrow night. Is that right? Thank you all. If you're welcome to hang around. We're going to talk about. Which maybe we should announce. We have an open house. Let's announce that, Scott.
The open house. Tomorrow night, we're having an open house at West Central at 6 o'clock. We're going to be discussing our new comprehensive plan. It'll be full of cows and fertilizer plants. So please show up.
That'll get them there. Fertilizer. That's better than cookies and coffee.
Cows and fertilizer plants. If